Welcome to the Know-How video series for users of Avaya Engagement Designer. In this video, we're going to build and test a workflow definition that handles calls into a company's international support hotline. This is the workflow definition that we are going to build. A company provides an international, multi-language support hotline to its registered customers. When a customer dials a hotline number, the call is intercepted and triggers the workflow. A database read is performed to check that the customer is registered for the support hotline. If not, the call is dropped. If so, the customer's home country and preferred language are retrieved and a welcome message played whilst a second database read is performed to identify a local support agent with the appropriate language skills. If a local agent is found, a message is played to the customer and their call is forwarded to that agent. Otherwise, a second database read is performed to identify an agent in any location who speaks the customer's preferred language. So let's begin with a new workflow definition and configure the start event. The workflow will be triggered on interception of an inbound call, so select Event Family, Call Intercepted and type Call Intercept to Called Party. This is a standard event defined in the event catalog. You don't need to create it. Looking at the output schema, you can see that the call event passes in lots of information about the call. However, we're only going to use the call's unique identifier and the caller's handle, which will usually be their phone number. So, select Output Mapping and map these two call event items to the start schema, which has been automatically created in the variables object. The next step is to get the location and language of the calling party from the company database. Add the read from DB task to the workflow, connect it and set its properties. Select the DB server profile name of the company database as administered on System Manager, in this case it's 1. Paste in the SQL query which will get the language and location of the calling party from the use cases table in the database. When you retrieve and show the input schema to the SQL query, you'll notice that it expects a single string parameter, param1, which corresponds to the calling party value in the SQL query. The output includes a result set that comprises the language and location associated with the calling party value that was input to the query. Next, select Input Mapping and map the calling party handle previously stored in the variables object to the param1 value that will be input to the SQL query. We need to store the output, language and location values for use later in the workflow. But before we can do that, we need to define a schema for them in the variables object. Create a new variable called custData and add two fields, language and location, both strings. Reopen the Read from DB Properties dialog, select Output Mapping and map the language and location output from the task to the corresponding fields in the custData variable that we just created. Because the database query could return multiple sets of language and location, and we only want one, we need to do some data transformation. Click the connection arrow for each field in turn, and change the result set index variable to the value 0. In this way, if more than one result set is returned by the database query, only the first will be stored. We now want to play a welcome message to the customer, whilst at the same time trying to connect them to a support agent. This involves simultaneous processing on two paths, so start by adding a parallel gateway. To build out the welcome message path, add a play announcement task, an end event to terminate the path, and connect them like so. Because text-to-speech processing is available in this environment, we can configure the play announcement task with the actual text of the welcome message. To specify which call the message is to be played in, select Input Mapping and map the stored call identifier variable to the corresponding field in the task's input schema. Now let's start building the Connect to Agent path by adding another Read from DB task. We're going to access the same database, but this time the SQL query will return the phone numbers of resources, that is, of support agents, with the specified language skills responsible for the customers in the specified location. Retrieving and looking at the query input schema, you can see that it expects two parameters, input param1 and input param2, which correspond to the customer's language and location values. The output from the query is a set of resources which comprises the phone numbers of all matching support agents. Input mapping is simply a matter of linking the language and location variables to the appropriate input param fields in the task's input schema. Before doing the output mapping, we need to create a schema in the variables object to store the selected support agent's phone number. Once that's done, map the output from the readFromDB task to the agent phone number variable just created. Because the output is a set of resources and we only want one, we'll change the result set index to 0 so that only the first resource in the result set will be selected. A message will now be played to the customer, letting them know that they are about to be forwarded to a support agent, so add another play announcement task, configure it with the text of the message, and map the call identifier variable to the task's input schema. To forward the call to the support agent, add a forward call task, connect it, and configure its input mapping. Map the agent phone number variable to the task's redirect number field and the call identifier variable to the task's UCID field. This ensures the task will forward the specified call to the specified support agent's number. To terminate this path, add and connect an end event. So far, the workflow only addresses the fair weather scenario, whereby the caller is identified as a registered customer and connected to a support agent in their location. But what if the caller isn't a registered customer or an agent isn't available locally? If the caller isn't a registered customer in the company database, the readFromDB getCustomerData task will return an error. To capture the error, add an error boundary event to the task. In this scenario, we will simply end the call and terminate the whole workflow, so add a drop call task, connect it to the error boundary event, map the call identifier variable to the task's UCID field, and add a terminating end event. The readFromDB getAgentData task could return an error, which we would handle as before, or it could fail to return any results within a reasonable amount of time. If the task doesn't return any support agents that match the customer's location and language within 1 minute, we'll perform a more relaxed database search on language only. To do this, attach your timeout boundary event to the task and configure the duration to be 60,000 milliseconds. Add a third readFromDB task, connect it to the timeout boundary event, and configure it so that it will return agents with matching language skills at any location. If a matching support agent is found, forward the call to that agent. Alternatively, if no matching agent is identified, drop the call and terminate the path. To do this, attach an error boundary event to the readFromDB getAgentRelaxed task, add, connect and configure a drop call task, and terminate the path. That completes the workflow definition, so let's save it. Next, validate the workflow definition to ensure that there are no errors or warnings, and then deploy it to the Avaya Engagement Development Platform with file name 01 root inbound call. All looks good, so it's ready to test. Open System Manager and navigate to the Service Status page for the appropriate Engagement Development Platform server. Select the Collaboration Designer service and click on the Administration Access option to open the Administration console. You can see our workflow definition at the top of the list of deployed workflows. To trigger the workflow for testing, select it and click on the Create Instance button at the bottom of the page. Enter test values for the call identifier, called party and calling party. To test the fair weather scenario, ensure you enter called and calling party values that exist in your database tables. Click OK to submit the test and create an instance of the workflow. Select the Instances tab where our workflow instance is listed. Double-click on the entry to open the Instance Detail page, where you can see from the green highlights that the workflow instance completed successfully, verifying that the caller was a registered customer and connecting them to a support agent with matching language and location values. Double-click on any task to view its inputs and outputs. As you can see, the customer's handle 3000 was input to the Read from DB Get Customer Details task, which output the customer's location, India, and their preferred language, Hindi. Finally, let's test the workflow by making a real call from a customer at number 5000 to the support hotline at number 7000. All being well, the caller will hear the announcements and be connected to the agent at extension 2000.
Please hold while we connect you to an appropriate agent. Thank you for your patience. You will now be forwarded to one of our agents.
That worked as expected, and here we can see information about the workflow instance that was created. That completes this know-how video on building and testing a workflow definition to handle calls into a company's international support hotline. For more information and developer resources for Avaya Engagement Designer and the Avaya Engagement Development Platform, please visit the DevConnect portal at the URLs shown.